Previously, on part 2 of a2823103, A Cut Above, George somehow managed to capitalise on the little shop he rented on Byers Avenue, then known as Tambaroora Street, and purchased his own property from Moses Bell at the farthest end of Clark Street. The colourless world of the Holtermann collection highlights the primitive structure that George is now operating out of, and by adding colour, it highlights it even further. But, over time, George would make improvements that would eventually support this structure well into the future. While the Bryant tree was planted in Hargraves in 1862, it continued to grow until 1871, when it was then transplanted in Hill End. By the following year, 1872, Henry Beaufoy Merlin was in town and was producing stunning portraits out of his American and Australasian photographic studio on Tambaroora Street. And the Bryants all sat or stood in this studio to capture a moment in time. But what they probably didn't realise was that it was also a moment that will eventually bring their past into the present for the future. This year, 1872, Hill End was at the peak of its production, and with the Holtermann specimen discovery in October of that year, it appeared that Hill End's future as a gold mining town was secure. It was now producing more gold than it could process, but it wasn't to last. (1875). Almost overnight, the mass production of gold almost completely dried up, and as a result, the inhabitants of Hill End left in droves. One of the few exceptions was George Bryant, who was confident the town would survive, if not for the gold industry, but hopefully for an entirely different industry altogether. While the town's population was dwindling, the optimistic Bryant family was otherwise increasing, with the birth of their sixth child, a girl they named Adelaide in 1875, and 4 years following their last child in 1871. Just a little over 2 years earlier, George had foreseen a positive future for the town of Hill End, so much so that the shop was renovated and converted into a brick building. However, by 1875, George had seen the writing on the wall and sold the business and the building to another butcher named Charles Paxton, not to be confused with the wealthy gold mine owner named Joseph Paxton, who is actually a prime candidate for a future episode. While the butcher shop was now in the hands of Mr. Paxton, George continued to manage the shop for him. But by 1877, the butchery was back in the hands of George, and more likely purchased back at a lesser price as the town's population continued to decline. The boom years that once topped over 8,000 residents were well and truly over. However, While the remaining families were a fraction of that, there was still the essential commodities that were vital for their existence. And one of those essentials was their local butcher. So George stayed on. And with his beloved butcher shop back, George's blood is once again pumping with colour. (1879). It's been 4 years since George and Mary's last child, Adelaide. And with George now aged 44 and Mary 35, it definitely now seems that their family is complete. Their eldest child, Albert, is now 17 years old and is presumably working in his father's butcher shop. Albert has 2 younger brothers and 3 little sisters. But in 1879, a 4th sister arrived. Her name was Elsie. We can now positively confirm that the Bryant family tree is complete. (1890). By now, George was 53 years old, a relatively respectable age for these times. And most of the Bryant children would have been living their own lives. However, the 2 youngest girls, Adelaide and Elsie, and in addition the youngest son John, were still remaining in the living quarters at the butcher shop. It was time for an upgrade. If you recall back to episode 2, Bryant's butcher shop was bookended between 2 hotels, Steele's Hotel to the right and the Star of Hope Hotel to the left. But what can't be seen in this photograph is otherwise captured in the progressive series of the panoramas, and the next building to the left of the Star of Hope was, you guessed it, another pub. And while you can only manage to make out 3 of the letters in the signage, ODD, this hotel was the Dodds Family Hotel. Although this photograph was taken prior to the panorama, this is the Dodds Family Hotel without the signage. After the licence of Dodds Hotel was abandoned in 1873, it appears that the building was used as a residential occupancy, presumably by the Dodd family, as the structure was referred to as Tommy Dodd's Place. By the 1890s, Hill End's populace was reduced to a handful of persistent fossickers, panning and scratching out a meagre income, while most were making a decent living from rabbiting. Bryant, on the other hand, was otherwise prospering, capitalising on the workers' voracious appetite for fresh meat. George still had the confidence that Hill End would recapture some of its halcyon days. And as his business was profiting, he took full advantage and purchased several lots of land opposite to his butchery. And in December 1890, he paid Moses Bell £100 for the former Dodds Hotel. George applied to have the former pub pulled down and reconstructed as a purposely built residence for he and his remaining family. It's unclear how much of the former Dodds structure was demolished, if any, but what is clear is the building was extensively modified and in the form of a modern Victorian home that would not be out of place in any major city for that time, but in addition was completely out of place in Hill End. George named their new home Athol, and possibly after the town where Mary's mother was born, called Blair Athol in Scotland. These wonderful pictures, courtesy of Keith Stapley, shows Athol shortly after its completion. Mary Bryant and one of her daughters, possibly Adelaide, can be seen here on the veranda. George can also be seen tending to his beautiful garden that consisted of roses, chestnut, cherry, and Santa Rosa trees, along with a thriving vegetable garden, which, in addition of the apparent abundant supply of meat, created an almost self-sufficient existence for the Bryants. Another of these wonderful photos shows an aging George and Mary sitting together with their cat on a bright sunny afternoon in their garden. But perhaps the most interesting photograph captures not just George and Mary, but that of both their daughters, Adelaide on the left and Elsie to the right. George Henry Bryant's life can be best summarised by the Reverend T.J. Curtis at St. Paul's Church in Hill End in 1909.
The deceased was born in Sydney on May 9th, 1837. From Bathurst, he had gone with his parents and the other members of his family. He removed to Hargraves, at that time a thriving mining centre, and commenced business. He was there married in 1860 to Mary Ann Petrie. To them were born 3 sons and 4 daughters, all of whom, in due time, successfully and happily married, and they all, with their mother, survive. In 1871, Mr. Bryant, with his wife and family, went to reside at Hill End and continued there to the close of his life. The Hill was still famous for its large population of miners and great output of gold. Our deceased friend's prosperity in trade enabled him to amass a fair competency. But incomparably, the best gift of God to him was a true, faithful, helpful, loving Christian wife. Together they trod the upward path, lived the holy life, honoured and served God themselves, and diligently trained their children in the heavenly way. A prominent colonial statesman once said that every child born in the land is worth at least £500 to the public estate, but the value of upright and pious parents cannot be reckoned in coin. According as we sow shall the harvest be. It is not surprising that, profiting by the precept and example of their home life, all those children, in their adult years, became honoured, respected, useful and loved members of the community. Mr. Bryant had for years been afflicted with heart trouble, and in July last he became a confirmed invalid. His survival for so many months was, without doubt, attributable to his willpower and abstemious habits, together with the long and constant care and nursing bestowed upon him by his wife and daughters. He was an eminently charitable, benevolent, respected, trusted, public-spirited man. It was therefore but natural that he should have been chosen to hold several positions of influence and importance. Until ill health compelled him to resign, he was president of the Hill End Hospital. During a long period up to the end of his life, he was chairman of the local public school board and ever manifested the keenest interest in the children. He was a Freemason and an Orangeman. In 1879, he was elected Worshipful Master of the Masonic Lodge, number 296, Hill End. Both Mr. and Mrs. Bryant were members of St. Paul's Presbyterian Church, Hill End, and among its most zealous, energetic and active workers, and he was for many years its honorary treasurer, and on its board of management. His religion was, however, of that vital character which is not content short of a loving, personal communion with God. Thus, from the very valley of the shadow of death, he could say to his dear ones, "I fear no evil. I am quite prepared to die." His prayer that his closing hours might be free from acute agony was answered, and in calm and peaceful quietude, his wife and daughters around him, a tender goodbye on his lips, and a look of unutterable love in his eyes. He fell asleep in Jesus within a day of attaining his 72nd birthday. Our profound sympathies go out towards the mourners, but thank God for the Christian hope of heaven, and may it be their sweet and abiding consolation. I feel personally bereaved, for I knew Mr. Bryant well, and to know him was to love him. Unable to reach my friend's deathbed, or to be present at his funeral, I most gratefully appreciate the Reverend Mr. Baxter's visits to him, and his services in connection with the obsequies. The mortal remains of the departed were followed to their last resting place in the quiet little cemetery among the hills by a large concourse of people, and the whole of the local school children marched there in procession. A good name is rather to be chosen than great riches and loving favour, rather than silver and gold. Be sure to stay tuned for the fourth and final episode of A Cut Above, where we will see what became of Athol, the Great Western Meat Mart, and, more importantly, the remaining members of George Henry Bryant's family, where they will also be brought back from the past into the present for the future. Thank you for watching.